We're going to cover a movie called Both Sides of the Blade, headlined by Juliette Binoche and Vincent Lindon. What do we know Vincent or I don't know, it's Paris, so do you call him Vincent or Vincent Lindon? Do we know him? Eric or Bruce? What was the previous movie that we loved him in?
That the
Teton.
Teton.
Teton. Yeah, come on, Teton. Bruce, you loved that. Was that one of your favorites from last year, Bruce? Teton?
Yeah, I think it was my number 2.
Okay. Now, Both Sides of the Blade.
T'es belle. C'est incroyable ce que t'es jolie.
Je t'aime. Au revoir, à demain.
À demain, Sarah.
J'ai aperçu François tout à l'heure.
Allô?
François. C'est moi. C'est moi. En 10 ans, on doit compte.
Mon amour.
On a aimé quelqu'un, ça disparaît jamais complètement. Ça y est, c'est reparti. L'amour, la peur, la nuit sans fermer l'œil, sans dire que je mouille.
Le passé qui revient. C'est le passé qui revient.
On se quittera plus maintenant, tu le sens pas.
Tu joues avec le jeu. Alors fais attention.
J'ai rien fait.
T'avais l'ange. Maintenant tu vas voir le diable.
Mon amour, mon amour, mon amour.
I'm falling down both sides of the blade.
It's a love triangle. I'm looking right now on my iPhone as far as a plot summary. But look, I really don't need to look at it too much. It opens in theaters July 8th, only in theaters, not on demand or on digital. It centers on this really loving couple. They're very passionate. Jean and Sarah. Sarah's played by Juliette Binoche, and Jean is played by Vincent Lindon. And what happens is they're 10 years into their relationship. It starts off with them on, I believe they're on a vacation and everything's cool. They have a really great apartment in the middle of the city. They have a great balcony overlooking the city. They are early to mid 50s, very in love couple, everything's good. Until one day, Sarah's walking down the street and she happens upon her ex-lover, Francois, played by Grégoire Colin, I believe. Grégoire Colin. And Francois, it's a chance meeting. He doesn't see her, but she sees him out of the corner of her eye. And as soon as she sees him, her world is turned upside down because she still holds feelings for her ex-lover. Now the catch is, Francois, things get worse for her because her lover Jean decides to become business partners with Francois. He starts working with Francois. They're trying to recruit players for, I guess, a new rugby team or whatever. That's not really specified. Jean or John, however you pronounce his name, he's an ex-con and he is pretty much dependent on Sarah. He's dependent on so many things. He's hoping that actually teaming up with Francois in some kind of business venture will land him some kind of stability, financial stability, or just make him more of a wage-earning man. And he's kind of also a deadbeat dad, and that's kind of touched on as well in Both Sides of the Blade. It is directed by internationally renowned filmmaker Claire Denis. Again, that is Both Sides of the Blade. It was a winner of Best Director at the Berlinale of this year, 2022. Eric Holmes, let's start with you regarding Both Sides of the Blade. Your thoughts on this movie?
This was pretty good. It was kind of like Blue Valentine without the back and forth. Like, it was pretty linear. There wasn't any flashbacks or anything. Basically, it's just a love story, good relationship, and slowly kind of unraveling and turning bad. Don't know what to say about the end, but it ended in a pretty satisfying way, I think. Yeah, this is not really my cup of tea. This was like a good version of this, I think. Didn't quite set my life on fire like Paris 13 District did, but I would kind of put it up there, like not quite neck and neck with it, but like pretty close. Because I just liked how they set up the characters and the relationship dynamic and how it played out between the two of them. especially towards the end, it gets to some parts where it gets a little hairy when certain things in the relationship come to light. They're following the one guy. He hasn't messed up yet, but you could see the anger kind of coming out of him. It's like, oh God, don't do the thing. Don't do the thing. Yeah. This was good stuff.
Yeah, Both Sides of the Blade is very interesting. Just critically acclaimed filmmaker, critically acclaimed actors, so many different threads. I'm glad you liked it, Eric. Here's my thing with this. There are some plot threads in this movie that are just absolutely unnecessary. Juliette Binoche as Sarah, she is sort of a pretty much a radio journalist, interviewer, and there's this whole thing about, I think, maybe immigration or this crisis in Lebanon. I don't know. There's this world crisis. They try to tie that in together. There's this Gene and his son. There's that thread is kind of weird. There's a lot of different plot elements. Maybe for me, these elements didn't gel. Bruce, did this movie gel for you, this whole narrative of all these threads? Am I being a little bit too mean to this narrative, or did you think did you like it as much as Eric?
No, I don't think you're being too mean. That is almost exactly my thoughts too. There's kind of this whole racial class subplot, like you said, with her being this radio host, almost like an NPR host. I don't know what it is in France, but the version of that, I guess. And then the son, and I kind of understand why the son is there to kind of flesh out the character played by the
Vincent Lindon,
character.
John, yeah.
Kind of to flesh him out a little bit, but I didn't think you needed to get that to understand him. And I kind of agree with you. I think that, which I think you're saying is that if we focus just pretty much on those three characters and the interaction and what that's going to mean to their lives, you know, the old flame who was irresponsible and that's why she left him to go for the responsible guy, or at least the dependable guy, and then to see how that is kind of replaying the other way and how will that end up. I think that is enough, even though it might not be the most revolutionary story in the world. That's enough. That's a human story for you to latch onto, I think. And I think that the key is also her character, right? The most interesting thing about this movie to me is her character, because her character is a very flawed character, like a real person who is literally emotionally torn, and she doesn't do things that are necessarily the best choices because she is torn, and she gets called on it by all sides, and it becomes quite a problem. I guess my overall take is I'm somewhat similar to Eric. I might be a little lower. I don't know where he's going to rate it. I think that the acting and the interpersonal acting scenes in this movie are very strong. This movie falls flat on its face if it doesn't have these actors in the lead roles, because Juliette Binoche and Vincent Lindon are so good. And when they're together, the way they interact off each other with the script they have is impeccable. I mean, it's nearly Marriage Story level interactions in some of these scenes.
Yes.
The story itself is not Marriage Story level. That's the problem. So I would say for me, it's a mild recommend, almost solely on the backs of the actors as far as the performances they give. They're really, really good.
Well, that sounds like a mild recommendation for you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Eric, do you agree that it's pretty much the anchor of this whole, it's not your type of film, but I think you ended up liking it a little bit more than Bruce and I did. Did you feel there was more than the actual performances? The actual story itself grabbed you, I guess? You know?
So the part with and you can cut this out if this is spoiler. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. But the deal with the son, I think that sets up the stakes of the relationship. Like that's why that's in there, because otherwise it's just a man and woman together, and if they break up, oh well, that happens. But he's in a position, or at least this is kind of how I read it, he's in a position where he basically chose her over his son. Is that
that's not a spoiler? That's not a spoiler. That's not a spoiler at all.
Okay, so when things in the relationship start to go south, this isn't just oh no, I'm breaking up with my girlfriend. This is, I left my son for you, and I'm not happy about where this is going. So I think it just kind of raises the stakes a little more by having that angle in it that you wouldn't have if it was just the two of them, with the third part of Francois in there.
I initially was sounding very dismissive, a little bit dismissive of this movie. Again, I don't know much about Claire Denis. I think Eric and Bruce, you guys have seen more of Claire Denis' stuff. I mean, even with that movie High Life, I still haven't seen that with Robert Pattinson. But there are some really great cinematic flourishes in this movie. Both Sides of the Blade, the music's fantastic. It feels like it's coming out of some kind of suspense thriller Alfred Hitchcock movie, and you're thinking, is something weird going to happen? Is something very mysterious and what? And then you realize this is not a spoiler. This is really a relationship drama filled with a score that in many ways, I mean this in the best way, pays homage to someone like a Bernard Herrmann or something. So that's awesome. There is this one monologue, going back to what you were saying, Eric, with Vincent Lindon and his son, and he's trying to give his son some salient advice. And like I do in my previous relationships, he just goes in circles and says the same thing over and over again for about 7 or 8 minutes. It's interminable a little bit. It's annoying, but it's so well done. And then Eric, what you're saying about these kind of showdowns in the apartment that they share is really explosive as well. There's so many really interesting things to enjoy about Both Sides of the Blade. But for me, I'm pretty much agreeing with you, Bruce. It really lies on the back of Juliette Binoche, who personally, I've always been madly in crush with her, and seeing Juliette Binoche in anything, automatically kind of like a 3-star film for me. And this is where this movie lands for me. This is a mild recommend for me. Both Sides of the Blade, 3 stars for me. Eric Holmes, you had something to say.
Oh, I was going to say, just, you don't need this advice from me, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Don't forsake your children for a relationship.
Yeah. I'm cutting that out.
You can if you want, but just saying, might
Don't
not
do
be
that.
the best idea.
You're right. Very good advice from Eric Holmes. But so what is your rating on Both Sides of the Blade?
I kind of want to go, I'm between 3.5 and 4.
Love it.
Probably say 3.5, because again, this is not my type of movie, but I still liked it for what it was.
And before we get to your rating, Bruce, let me just put a fine point to this. The ending of Both Sides of the Blade, I thought was pretty effective. Yeah. Really cool. There are some really cool moments about this. Maybe, I don't know, this might be a room to grow with kind of rating, but right now for me it's a 3. Throw it to you, Bruce, on Both Sides of the Blade.
I think I'm the same as you. I think I'm 3 stars. And I would add to it too that if you are a person that really likes kind of intense, close relationship dramas, you'll probably love this movie. I mean, I think that if you're already in that realm, it's really good for that. It's kind of not, at least for Eric and me, it's not really our cup of tea necessarily.
And Eric gave it 3.5 stars.
He gave it the most. Yeah.
This is 3.5 stars coming from someone that doesn't like this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
It turns out those French people make pretty good movies, huh?
Yeah, who knew?
They do. We watch us and never get any listen from France, especially the way I pronounce Jean, aka Jean. So I apologize for that. There's going to be a lot of apologies on this episode, by the way.